Good evening. Tonight's devotional, or a portion of that, comes from an article I recently came across in the House to House, Heart to Heart publication. And it starts off talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is sports. I'm going to start off with that some of you may remember a famous and very successful quarterback who played in the NFL for many years ago, named Terry Bradshaw. He also had done quite a bit of commentary. I think maybe even dabbled in acting a little bit. But Terry was the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers for about 14 years, and during the middle portion of his career was his most successful period. During that period, he led his team to the Super Bowl 4 times, and they won every trip. He was actually the first quarterback to win 4 Super Bowls. He ended his career being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so we can say that he enjoyed much success in his career. But in those first couple years of his career, he did not have much enjoyment. I recently heard on the radio, they mentioned some particular stats about him his first couple years in the league. And when I heard that, I thought that can't be right. From when I remember as a child watching him in 2 of those Super Bowls, he did everything right and did not have the overall stats and numbers that a lot of quarterbacks had, but was, again, very successful. So I took to the internet, looked at a couple of different websites. Sure enough, those numbers were right. It all matched. His first year in the NFL, he only appeared in 13 games. He started 8 of those. In those 13 games, he had 6 touchdowns, but he had a whopping 24 interceptions. He threw to the wrong team about 4 times as much as he should have. His second year, he played in 14 games, started 13. He improved to 13 touchdowns, but still another 22 interceptions. I was really surprised that a man that had so much success later in his career started out so poorly. These days in the NFL, you start out with a couple years like that, the team's going to give up on you and probably move on. In fact, Terry even had, in one of those years his team won the championship, he had 25 interceptions. When you look at his career total, he had 212 touchdowns, but 210 interceptions. So as a quarterback, he made his share of mistakes. But those mistakes didn't stop him from succeeding. 4 times, when the season ended, his team was on top. Even though he made many mistakes throughout the season, in those final games when it mattered most, he came through for his team. He finished strong, and he would not be beaten. His failures did not stop him. Switching to another sport, some of you may remember a famous pitcher from baseball named Nolan Ryan. Nolan's considered to be, by some, one of the best or possibly the best pitcher the game ever had, primarily because of his long career. He pitched in the majors about 27 years and pitched well into his 40s. When he left the game, he had struck out more batters than any other pitcher in baseball. Plus, he had several no-hitters, and he also was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. But Nolan, like Terry Bradshaw, wasn't always successful. In his early years of his career, he came up with the New York Mets. He could throw the ball very hard, but he had a lot of promise, but he struggled with his control. He would walk many batters and hit several batters, just as much as he would strike them out. Similar to Terry, Nolan would struggle with walks or mistakes his entire career. Even though he's the all-time strikeout leader with nearly 5,400 career strikeouts, he's also the all-time walk leader with 2,800 walks. But during those early years with the Mets, his manager and I imagine the organization as well gave up on him because of those mistakes. There's a story told that after one of Nolan's miserable games where he had multiple walks, multiple hit batters, a reporter approached him in the clubhouse for an interview. And he said Nolan was standing in front of a mirror and he was trying to tie his necktie, but he's having difficulty seeing because his eyes were filled with tears. When I think of Nolan Ryan, I don't think of a man that would cry, maybe so easy. This is a deep-spoken, tough Texan who pitched a long time, who roughed up Robin Ventura because he charged his mound, if some of you remember that story. He took a ball off the chin, cut his lip, had blood running down his chin onto his white uniform, kept on pitching. But at this time, he was crying. His failure, I guess, was getting to him. He let his team down. Later that same season, the Mets gave up on Nolan Ryan and traded him away to the then-known California Angels. They gave up on him. Now, for some reason, the Steelers did not give up on Terry Bradshaw early in his career. There may have been talk of it, and they may have considered it, but it didn't happen. Nolan's career really took off after he joined his new team and experienced much success with them. He eventually went on to the Houston Astros for several years, finished his career in the home state of Texas with the Rangers. Even though he continued to struggle with walks or control, his determination and continued work to get better helped him to get out many more batters than he ever put on base. The reporter brought up this story of Nolan struggling with the Mets many years later after he had cemented himself as one of the greatest pitchers to play the game. In the beginning, Nolan failed quite often, and he continued to deal with some mistakes the rest of his career. But he kept working, and he kept practicing. He just kept doing his job. Both athletes enjoyed much success and overcame their failures, their mistakes, even when those close to him possibly considered or did give up on them. In like manner, a Christian's life will have many failures and mistakes and disappointments. Many Christians have just thrown up their hands and gave up and quit their Christian race, thinking they have failed, that they just cannot overcome. Maybe they thought they're just not good enough. But we must be persistent in our race. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, we read, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, and always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." When failure and disappointments come, remember these words from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." Don't consider giving up just because you fail, because you make mistakes, because you fall short. Keep running the race, because the prize at the end is far too great to give up. Philippians 4:13 says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." In 2 Timothy 4:7, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith." Tonight, if you need help or encouragement, you need listening ears and a caring heart from those who are trying to finish this race with you, those who will not give up on you, please come as we stand and sing.